we can see strike-slip faults happening when we have lateral escape. We saw it some over in the map of India and Asia. We can also see it here with the Arabian plate slamming into the Eurasian plate, and Turkey is actually being thrust out to the west as an escape, a lateral escape. And so we have strike-slip faults as Turkey is moving west. Along the Arabian plate, we have reverse faults from where it was subducting and now it's continent-continent. So we have reverse faults and uplift. On the other edge of it, we have strike-slip, transform boundary. Moving on, we can also have strike-slip within a rift system. So it's not just collisional. Here we have San Andreas Fault, a big transform plate boundary, we know that. But over here we have a rift system with lots of half-grabens. And, Death Valley, Panamint Valley, the Sierra Nevada, then the San Joaquin Valley. So we've got valleys and uplifts, and along the southern edge is a big strike-slip fault. This one is not a transform fault. This one, yes, one end of it ends at another fault. The eastern end dies out. This is a transcurrent fault. The Garlock fault is a transcurrent fault. Might see it listed as transform in some literature if people are not familiar with the difference between a transform and a transcurrent fault. But you can clearly see that it just dies out on the eastern edge of the rift system. Although, yeah. Here at oceanic transforms and fracture zones, we've got East Pacific Ridge here. This is mid-ocean ridge. And we've got East Pacific Ridge here. Again, part of the, it's a mid-ocean ridge. And we have the zone between them was once upon a time an accommodation zone that has turned into a fault system, a strike-slip fault connecting the two ridges. Now, beyond each of them is something called a fracture zone, labeled FZ. So fracture zone, between them, the transform zone, and then on the other side, another fracture zone. The reason that it's not a transform fault once you get over here is that, first of all, it's going to die out, but also there's not active displacement and motion across this. Just lots of fractured rock to take up the stress. And you're not, if you cross this, you're still all on the same plate. This is the same plate as this. There's just a fracture. On the other hand, here, when you cross this transform zone, this up top here is a different plate than what's below it. We come over here, if we cross the fracture zone, it's the same plate. All of this that I'm running the mouse over is one plate. In this case, call it the eastern plate. All of this is one plate. It's the western plate. I'm not quite sure where within the ocean this particular system is, so I don't know off the top of my head what the actual names of these two plates are. That's why I'm calling it eastern and western. But the key is that as you cross the fracture zone, you're still on the same plate. There's no plate boundary there. There's no current displacement even happening across that fracture zone, because this ridge and this ridge are going to be spreading at basically the same speed. So this part of this plate is moving west at, say, 3 kilometers a year. Down here it's moving west at 3 kilometers a year. So there's no shearing or displacement across the fracture zone. It's just busted up from before, during the system, or the time when the rift was just being created. Same thing over here. This is moving east at 3 centimeters a year, and this is moving east at 3 centimeters a year. So across the fracture zone, no displacement occurring. On the other hand, across this transform zone, you've got a net displacement of 6 centimeters a year, because the top is moving left at 3 centimeters a year, the bottom is moving right at 3 centimeters a year. So, this median ridge, different hills of this ridge are sliding past each other or towards each other at 6 centimeters a year. If these spreading centers were faster, say they were, fast spreading centers of like 7 or 8 centimeters a year, again, in the transform zone, whatever the spreading rate is at these ridges, rifts, you double that, and that's the speed across that transform zone. Okay, with that, it finishes up the last chapter of the year.